Okay, so yeah, as Adam said, I've been behind the camera for over 40 years, so I kind of feel maybe a little overqualified for this presentation today. It's exciting to have everybody here. A while back when I did this presentation the first time, I kind of called this "So You Want to Photograph Your Artwork?" Yeah, we've changed it to "How to Photograph Your Artwork." But it's interesting. We're going to talk about all different kinds of reasons for why you want to photograph your artwork and all the things that kind of go along with that. There's going to be a ton of information here. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you a little warning here. Don't try to keep up with me and take notes or you're going to miss the whole presentation, right? So we're going to do this. Adam has promised that they're going to record the session and that they will send a link out to everybody so you have a link to get back and watch the video again. I'm also going to put my PDF notes up or my PowerPoint notes up as a PDF file with a link where you can go download it with all of my notes so you'll be able to read through all the information that I'm using to present today. And then also another document that will give you links to buying equipment and some of the stuff I'm going to show today also. So I'm a big Amazon user, so there'll be a lot of Amazon links there, but also a couple of other places online where you can buy some equipment and materials that you might need to make the best photographs of your artwork. So I say let's get started. So there's a lot of reasons, like I said, for wanting to photograph your artwork. And so one of them might be just simply to record your work for future reference. And I think for painters, that's actually kind of cool to be able to shoot images as you're maybe going through the process and have a record of maybe where you've made changes, or even have them to be able to share your work with other people. You may be asked to do a presentation for OMA just like this, and it'd be great to be able to show how you actually do your work. So that's one reason for doing that. And to record your work, you may not need anything real fancy to do that. So that's pretty simple to do. You may want to create files for your website or a blog. So online use is a big popular reason for wanting to photograph your artwork. Entering online shows and also gallery shows. A lot of times the gallery that you're maybe having your show at are going to request files from you so they can put your work up on their website or use it in an announcement or in emails. So there's the biggie for reproduction for magazines, books, and promotions. And my advice is that this really requires a really kind of high-end presentation where it might go beyond your ability to actually make files that are high enough resolution or high enough quality that they could use for books or magazines. Sometimes I say it's better just to kind of leave that to a professional, but don't be intimidated by it. So the idea is there's lots of kinds of artwork that we can talk about and different ways of photographing artwork. And today we're going to talk mostly about flat art, paintings, drawings, pastels. We also could do three-dimensional art, sculpture, and ceramics, but for our time frame that we kind of have here today and talking about, how to do these two things, photographing three-dimensional artwork is kind of a completely different set of techniques. So we're we're not going to be able to get into doing three-dimensional art. So today we're going to really focus on photographing flat art. So obviously the big question is, what kind of equipment will I need? And right off the bat here, so my goal is to show you that we can do this without breaking the bank. We can do it without having to spend, thousands and thousands of dollars to get set up. And hopefully by the time we get to the end here, you'll be able to see that I think you're going to probably have a lot of stuff already, a lot of equipment already to do this with. Obviously, the first thing we're going to need is a camera, right? So that's kind of really the basis of this whole thing. And here it is here. I'm sure all of you have one of these, a smartphone, an iPhone, some kind of a camera on a phone. And I'm sure you've all been told that you cannot shoot your artwork with a smartphone. You need to have a better camera than that. And we'll see if it's possible to use your smartphone to get the kind of results necessary for online submissions, website use, and the things that we talked about a few minutes ago. Again, you're probably not going to be able to get a high enough resolution or good enough quality to be able to make printed pieces or do reproductions from, but really we're going to kind of focus on the idea of creating work for online use here. Some of you may even have sort of a mid-range camera, a point and shoot camera. This would also be great. So if you have that, you need to maybe know a little bit more about how to operate the camera, but it'll work, it'll function just fine. And then of course there's the big granddaddy here that's going to cost you maybe $3,000-4,000. The high-end DSLR camera. You all think this is what you need, but it just depends on what you're doing, you know, the kind of work that you want to shoot and what the end result is going to be. It's with a camera like this, if you learn how to use the camera and you learn how to process the files, you would be able to make files good enough for reproduction, and also making prints from your paintings, you know, the things that everybody love to refer to as giclée prints. So it is possible. So, and most of the techniques we're going to talk about today won't matter which kind of camera you have. They will apply to every single one of the cameras I've just shown you now. All right, so this piece here was shot with a smartphone, right? Looks great on the screen. Hopefully it looks good to you guys. This one here was shot with a point and shoot camera, an Olympus. And this one here was shot with my high-end Canon 5D Mark III camera. Again, several $1,000s. If I line them all up and I asked you to pick which one was done with which camera, if you were able to identify them, it would be purely luck, because I can't even tell which one was done with which camera. So there you are. They're actually right in order: smartphone, point and shoot, and a 35mm DSLR. The idea here is that we're not viewing these as big giant reproduction prints, and we're viewing them online. And that's what we're talking about, is being able to create files good enough to view them for online sharing, whether it's through a website, Facebook, anywhere where you might be showing your work. All right, this here is going to probably be the most important piece of equipment outside of having the camera, as a tripod. And this is the one thing I think most people kind of bypass, but I'm telling you, in order to get a good sharp image of your work, you're going to need some kind of a tripod. And when I say some kind of a tripod, it could be a cheap little thing like this. This is like 14 bucks on Amazon. It actually comes with that little bracket that holds the iPhone right as part of the whole process. Now, this is not a real sturdy, strong tripod that you want to go backpacking with, or one that you want to hand to your kids to be tripping over. They'd probably break it in a day. But if you're careful with it, you can use this, you know, in your studio. It only raises to a height of about 50 inches, which might be a little bit low. Sometimes I'll leave the legs just collapsed as you see them there. There's 3 stages to the legs. And I could set it up on a table or a bench or something to get it to the right height to be able to photograph the painting. So, I mean, that's definitely a nice, cheap piece of equipment, but it will do the job. It holds the camera steady. That's what we're looking to do. You can step up to another level here. Again, this is only $15. This would be suitable for holding your point and shoot camera, so a little bit sturdier than that previous one. You'll need to buy the little holder attachment that goes on top of it. You'll see like $6 to $8 for these little attachments. They're all slightly different from each other. The one that you see there, the $7.99 one, is kind of big enough to be able to hold a tablet. So think about that. You can also use your smart tablet to be able to photograph your artwork with also. So don't have to necessarily use the phone if you don't want to. And then you can go all the way up to this $290, $300 tripod, and you can even spend more than that if you want to, but this typically is a nice, good, sturdy tripod that you would use for a higher end DSLR. But I would say that even if you do have a good, you know, heavy duty DSLR camera, the previous tripod would be suitable for that in the studio. Just wouldn't be great to be out, you know, shooting landscape or out in the environment where maybe there's some wind or a little, you know, where it might get a little more rugged use. All right, so outside of the camera, obviously we need some lighting, right? Lighting is pretty important. In fact, I would even say you can't take a picture in total darkness. I guess you can, but it would just be a black picture. So we're gonna need some lighting. And lighting is where this thing really starts to take off, like what are my options? And one thing we can talk about, some real simple kinds of lighting, like natural lighting. So natural lighting can be as simple as window lighting in your home or your studio. This would be definitely, especially this panel of windows here would let in quite a bit of light. But again, I'm going to show you some techniques about how to use window light that'll make it much easier to photograph in, and also give you probably better results than maybe what you're getting now if you're using window light. but it can still be great. The thing you have to remember about natural lighting is it's subject to a couple of things. One is when the sun goes down, the light is gone. So you've only got a certain period of the day that you're going to be able to photograph during. And then also subjected to weather if we have overcast days or bright sunny days. So it's great to have a place where, you know, maybe a common area where you can shoot your paintings if you find a nice spot that works very well. The coolest thing about natural lighting is it's free. You don't have to pay anything for it. It's already there, right? Another aspect to natural lighting is outdoors. So you can go outdoors and set up your paintings outdoors. The same problem here is the lighting's a little bit hard to control, and with an additional problem of wind, right? I mean, you get your easel out there and you put the painting on it and it's going to blow away. I mean, plein air painters know all about that, right? So you got to be careful once you get outside, make sure that the painting is really, you know, fastened or wired to the easel so it doesn't blow away. The best place to shoot is going to be an open shade, and you'll kind of see, like on this house here, here on the driveway, you see the kind of the harsh light on the right side of the house where it comes in kind of through those background trees. So that would be very uneven lighting to try to photograph your painting in. So putting it over here into the shade on the house would be a great spot. And if you think about it, if you have a good spot in your around your house, the north side of the house is going to give you the most consistent lighting all day long, because it'll never be in direct sunlight. So if you just watch the light around your house, you'll see the north side of your house will be in shade most of the day or all day. So try to look for a location that gives you that nice even lighting. All right, so another kind of lighting we'll talk about is continuous lighting. And when we say continuous lighting, it's basically like the idea of having a light in the house that has a switch on it. You switch it on, you switch it off. So while it's switched on, the light is just continuously on. And maybe the simplest, or maybe one that most people are really, you know, probably aware of, are these clamp-on lights. I mean, every artist has always had clamp-on lights in their studios, I'm sure. And it's kind of a love-hate relationship with clamp-on lights, right? So you can use them. Not my favorite light to use, and I will show you a really great light source for working indoors. These will run you about $6 to $10, and then of course you need to get light bulbs for them, and we'll talk a little bit about good lights to use for that kind of setup. So this is my favorite light source right now. I found this on Amazon a number of years ago. And the weird part is it is a LED security lamp, and it's designed to hang like under the eaves on your house. And for some reason, they have actually wired it already with a plug on there for you. So I would think most of the security lights would have to be hardwired into your home's electrical system, but these actually have a plug on them. So that works great. They have a little bracket on the bottom, but you see the one that's right there to the next to it. That's a little light stand adapter that you can attach to that bottom bracket on the LED light. And then it just sits right on top of the lighting stand. And then that makes these things very portable inside the studio. You can move them around. So that little, the light itself is $25, and that little adapter runs about $5. I mean, crazy cheap. And like I said, I will have links to these things on the equipment handout that you can download when Adam sends out the email afterwards. So I have down in my notes here, there's an update on these security lights that last time I checked on Amazon, I mean, prices are always kind of wandering around within a few bucks, but on Amazon, they now have a 2-pack for $39. I mean, so you think about $40, that makes them $20 a piece. This is probably easily the cheapest light source I've ever bought. And right now for photographing paintings, it's still the best one that I have. So if you think about, or the best way to do it, if I put this kit together, 2 lights, 2 of those adapters, and 2 light stands, I could do it easily for under $100, right? So that's pretty crazy. Again, so here's kind of those reflectors on stands rather than the clamp-on type lights, but here's some reflector ones. There's studio lights, and I have some links where you can find those lights also. And you'll notice in there that these do have those fluorescent bulbs in them, and that's kind of been something new that kind of came along about the same time that we had LED lighting too. But the cool thing about these, and actually the real word is cool, they never get hot. So you can have them on for quite a while. And the really great thing too is that by the time you bought this all together, this whole setup would be about $100 also. So that's kind of an interesting idea. So when we talk about lighting too, we're always trying to find ways to maybe modify the lighting or make the lighting much softer so it's less direct. So here's one way to put those kind of fluorescent lights onto light stands with umbrellas. And then basically the umbrellas, you don't shoot the light through the umbrella, but it reflects off the umbrella towards your artwork. And that makes it a very soft light source and a lot less chances for harsh shadows. These are also great. We weren't going to talk about 3D work, but these are great for shooting three-dimensional work because you get some really soft shadows with these. Again, these run about $100 with stands and lights and the umbrellas. Another way is what they call these softbox setup. And the softbox is those same lights are inside the box. The inside of the box has a highly reflective surface, and then the outside of the box has a really soft diffuser on the outside of it. And actually most of them have two of those where the light passes through two layers of diffusion, and you also get a really nice soft light. These are really nice for shooting three-dimensional tabletop work too. These can run anywhere from about $100 to $300 depending on how big of a setup you wanted to get. There's a place online that's called Cowboy Studio, and another one's called Studio Pro. Those will be listed in the equipment list also. But the great thing is that these fluorescent bulbs, they do not get hot at all. So they all, like this typical setup here, would have those bulbs inside for the light source. That's a look at the bulb. They're about $14. Now, the interesting thing about the bulbs, you can buy them in several different wattages. The bulbs get a little bit bigger as you move up in brightness. This bulb is rated for 105 watts. I mean, that's the energy that it draws, but it produces over 500 watts of light. So if you think about a 500 watt lamp, an incandescent lamp, I used to use them years ago. They get extremely hot and you just can't even touch them after they've been on for a while. These will never get that hot that you can't touch them at all. So 105 watts of energy, over 500 watts of light put out, and it's and compared to a tungsten light, it draws about 75% less energy, and they will burn for about 4,000 hours. So good value for $14. So the next kind of light we're going to talk about is like flash lighting. So we were talking about continuous lighting. Now we're going to talk about using flash lighting. And I don't mean flashlight lighting. We're talking about flash lighting. And we've all tried this, right? On-camera flash. Worst thing in the world. You're never going to get this on-camera flash thing to work for you. My advice is skip it, because this is what you get every time. And I'm sure you've all seen this as your results when you pick up your camera, you take a picture and the flash goes off. That's what you're going to see every time. And there's really no way around that as long as you use the on-camera flash. So the kind of flash I'm talking about are these little things, they call them speed lights. They're external flash units. And these can sit on top of your camera, like if you have a DSLR on the hot shoe, but again, you'd have the same problem. This would just flash straight off of the camera and it would just create that glare. So these little speed lights are pretty handy to use. They're pretty inexpensive. The interesting thing now is these little knockoff lights, Yong Now, I think they're called, something like that. There's a couple of different versions. These are about $80. When I first bought my Canon, I bought a Canon speed light directly from Canon, had all the bells and whistles on it. They're over $300 a piece. And then these things are 80 bucks. So I probably have 4 of these lights that I can use. They're really great. They run on battery. So you can also use them, outside of the studio, or you don't have to worry about being next to an outlet. There is one interesting thing though, is we need to put these onto light stands, and they need to be separate from the camera. So in order to get these lights to trigger, we use what's called a camera sync trigger. And this thing is actually, you'll see is sitting on top of the hot shoe on the DSLR. And when the trigger, the shutter release is released, this sends out an infrared or signal, and then it fires off those speed lights. So no matter where they're at in the room, you'll see that the flash will go off. One kind of little side problem to using these speed lights is they don't have modeling lights on them. So you're not going to be able to move the lights around and see what they're doing. So sometimes they're a little bit hard to use on three-dimensional artwork. But the cool thing is, if you're shooting digital, you take a picture and you look at it. And if you need to move the light, just slide the light around further, higher, lower, whatever you need to do. So you'll be able to get, basically, we always joke that the digital camera, eliminated the use of having to shoot Polaroids to get proofs, because usually we'd have to shoot a Polaroid and look at a Polaroid to see what our lighting looked like. But now, every time you shoot a picture, you get basically what we call like a Polaroid on the back of your digital camera. So it's really easy to use these flash lights if you sync them up using this type of a trigger device. And so this device is about $75. So again, modifying the flash or the speed light, basically the same idea. You can put the flash so that it sits inside of a box. You'll see like right here, it's pointing inside of one of those very soft boxes. Here it's being used to reflect off of an umbrella. And then this is one of the large soft boxes. And this actually has a much larger light in here. And sometimes, if you're gonna spend the money, you can get past using just the speed light. They actually sell like a light head here. And these would have like a modeling light attached to it, so you could see the light setup before you actually take the picture. But those would be a lot more expensive. So that's the use of the speed light. So we've talked about equipment, we've talked about lighting, but now we have to talk about what's the technique? How do I set up my lights? How do I set up my camera? How do I set up my artwork? So all those things are really important, again, to getting some great results that hopefully everybody's after improving their techniques. All right, so we're going to talk about photographing flat artwork, specifically paintings, works on paper. One thing that will definitely help you, and don't get lazy about this because it definitely does help, is to, if the artwork is framed and it's easy enough, try to remove the frame from the artwork, because the way the lighting gets set up, you're going to get shadows on the edge of the painting. So the shadows are going to interfere with the actual surface of the painting. And you could easily crop it out, but then that means you're losing part of your painting. And so, I mean, if you painted the edges, not the edges around the backside, but the actual very edges of the painting, you spent your time painting it, you don't want to crop it out. So remove the frame, that'll help get rid of the shadow. If the artwork is under glass, it is possible to shoot under glass, but it is really difficult to do. There are some special techniques you have to kind of follow to do that. So much easier that if you can unframe it, take it out from behind the glass, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. Also, where does the painting go? Setting it up on an easel. Cool thing about painters, most of you already have easels. Another simple method you can do is you can also just hang it on a wall. As long as you have enough space to put it on the wall, back the camera up and set up your lighting, that's probably the best way to do it. I've seen a lot of people trying to struggle to photograph paintings. They'll lay them on the floor, and then you have to try to get over the top of the painting somehow on a ladder, a step stool, and it's just ridiculous. And trying to get a tripod set up so that it's looking down at the floor over the top of the painting, it's just a pain. The easiest way to do this is hang it on the wall or put it on a painting easel. Definitely the simplest way to get it set up. So the painting, once it's up, it should be high enough that when you set up your camera on the tripod, that the camera lens should fall about center of the painting. So you're looking straight on the painting. You're not looking up at it, or you're not looking down at it. You're going to be looking straight on at the painting. So it lines up pretty much at the middle of the painting. Said it earlier, put your camera on a tripod. Don't even try to not do it on a tripod. It's just not going to be worth doing. Many times it looks great on the back of the camera, but by the time you look at it on the computer, it's just not going to be as sharp as you want it to be. So here's a setup where I got this image off the internet, but where somebody just kind of set a painting on the floor. It's leaning against the wall. And I chose this just because I want to talk a little bit about that idea that if the painting is leaning in this case, or even if it's on the wall, the most important thing that you can do is you need to make sure that that this camera angle, the back of the camera, the lens of the camera is parallel to the surface of the painting, and not only up and down, but side to side. So the camera will rotate and it will tilt top and bottom too. And if this isn't square to the painting when you photograph, the painting is not going to be square. And I'm sure you have all seen this. So this painting's wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. That means the camera was closer to the top of the painting than the bottom. And even as hard as you try to square it up, I'm going to guarantee you that it's going to be really hard to get it perfectly square. But I'm going to show you where you can take a painting that's this out of square and you can square it up with some software. And don't run away. Everybody freaks out when they go, oh no, software, I don't want to learn software. This is going to be the simplest software you've ever seen. And on top of that, I'm going to use the F word. It's free. Free software that'll fix this problem for you. I'm going to show you the results. Same painting, same file in the free software, and there it is fixed. I left it in the frame intentionally so that I could prove to you that I didn't crop the image to get it to go from out of square back to square, because normally this is what happens to your painting. And then you look at cropping it. I got to crop from here straight up, and by the time I get to the top, I'm losing that much of my painting on both sides. So the whole thing is trying to keep your whole painting square to the camera, and then when it's not, use some good software to square it up so you can get it perfectly square without cropping. It's pretty amazing. I'll demonstrate it in a minute. Another thing too that a lot of people don't think about too is using some kind of a shutter release or self timer, because what happens is the camera's sitting on the tripod, and when you go to push the shutter release button on the camera, whether it's on the back of the iPhone or whether it's on top of your DSLR or your point and shoot, every time you touch the camera, you shake it. There's no way you can not move the camera when you push these buttons on your camera. And again, if there's a little bit of a long exposure, just poking at your camera is going to create a little bit of a blur. So even your iPhones, smartphones and DSLRs and all the cameras will have some kind of a self timer on it, so you can run out in front of the camera and take a picture yourself. The iPhone has a self timer, so put it on the tripod, put it on self timer. I think it's 2 or 3 seconds is the shortest one, or maybe it's 5. You push the button, you move back from the camera and let it take the picture without you touching it. The timer goes off and it takes the picture. I didn't put a slide in here, but usually when I do a live demo, I usually show people also there's a very cool thing you can do with the old earbuds, and I'm not sure about the new ones now, because the old earbuds used to have a little volume control on the headphones, and that volume control acts as a shutter release too. Because if you think about on an iPhone, you don't have to push the button on the back of the camera every time. You can also take a picture, like the volume buttons on the phone also work like a shutter release. So if you're using those little earbuds and I think it's probably only works now on the older versions, but little volume button on the earbuds works as a great shutter release. So that's kind of an interesting idea. All right, so next, talking about maybe not necessarily your smartphone, but talking about cameras that have manual exposure on them. Some of the point and shoot cameras, most DSLRs. There's some things there that we need to pay attention to. One of the things is setting up an aperture. And so I know most of you painters are going, what's an aperture? But it's the part of the lens that lets the light through, that determines smaller or larger opening in the camera. Just sort of out of the engineering, the way a camera lens works is that an aperture of f8 is going to be the sharpest aperture to use if you have an adjustable aperture. And remember, shutter speed's not going to matter because it's sitting on a tripod. The painting is hanging on a wall. Nothing is going to move, we hope. I mean, that's the idea, that everything is sitting stationary when you take the picture. So if the exposure happens to be 2, 3, 4 seconds, won't matter. The camera's sitting still and the artwork's sitting still. That's going to give you your sharp results. Also ISO, so all of us old timers, ASA was the old letters we used to use, but anyhow, it's a standards for how we used to rate film, and now it's a standard by how the camera's recording device is set to be able to accept lower light level situations. And if you're all the way up to ISO 3200, then you're going to notice you get what's called noise. When you look at your file, it looked like really bad grain that we used to see on high-speed films years ago. And so the camera sensors also will produce grain or noise, and that can also oftentimes be caused by these higher ISO settings. So try to keep it somewhere in that range if you can set it up manually between 100 and 800. And then this is a tricky one too, because you'll notice that some of the new iPhones now have 2 or 3 lenses on it that you can use. And the thing you want to avoid is using a real wide angle. And the way you can tell when you're on wide angle is you have to get really close to take a picture of something. So using something that we would call more like a portrait lens setting, so something closer to what we call normal to telephoto. So you want to back the camera up from the art piece a little bit and then zoom in to kind of fill the frame as much as possible. If you shoot with a wide angle, you'll get this kind of distortion where the straight lines start to bow out around the edges of the painting. And this is what we're trying to avoid. So that is caused by using too wide angle of a lens. And again, in some advanced software, you can correct for that, but why not just, take care of it while you're setting up the camera and use less of a wide angle setting. And you'll see the distortion when you look through the camera too. When you're taking pictures of people, they get big noses from extreme wide angle close-ups. Everybody hates that. This is one too that I discovered a few years back when everybody started shooting with their smartphones. Is you pull them out of your pocket or you pull them out of your purse and you take a picture and everything looks like it has this glamour filter on it. And as it turns out, it's just smudge from your finger handling the camera or touching the lens or stuff out of your pocket or out of your purse. So every time you set up to use your camera, wipe it down. T-shirt material, or they sell little camera lens cleaners. It's just that lens is just sitting on the outside of the camera. There's no lens cap to cover it when you're storing it. Some of the newer ones might have that, but just make sure that the lens is clean, because it'll definitely make a huge difference in the sharpness of your image files. Auto white balance. I mean, that's another thing that's kind of like, might seem like a little bit advanced, but typically your iPhone will balance the color. So auto white balance has to do with color shifts and light temperatures. So if you remember, like in the old days, if you put in daylight film in your camera and you photographed outdoors, it came out fine. But if you shoot daylight film indoors, it came out real orange, and vice versa. If you had indoor film in your camera and you shot outside, it come out extremely blue. So we have still the same problem with digital, is that all lights have a color temperature. Some lights, you don't see it with your eye necessarily, but the camera will record it. So some lights can be very warm, some lights can be on the green side. So the auto white balance feature that's like built into your smartphone will take care of that. But if you're running DSLR where you can do a bunch of settings on your camera, typically auto white balance works really great. You don't have to do any kind of a custom white balance, but that's way advanced. We won't get into the concept of custom white balance at this point. All right, so we've talked about lighting, and so now let's talk about how we're going to set up the lights. So in natural light, we already mentioned this, is that the problem with outdoor light is that we're not going to be able to move the lights. But remember, the sun is pretty stationary, but remember, we can move the painting. We can twist the painting or move it so that the way that it looks at the light source. So again, we can't move the lights, but we can move the painting. Outdoor light, again, like I said before, can be used. Open shade's going to probably be your best bet. Again, here's that sort of house setup using very soft light, outdoor, north side of the house, open shade. Produce a nice even light. Also be extra careful of the surrounding environment colors. If you got a nice bright red house and your painting is sitting next to it and the light's bouncing off of it, your painting is going to take on that red cast. So don't, make sure that when you're moving the painting around to photograph, that it's not bouncing back some kind of odd color into your painting, because that can be very difficult to correct for afterwards also. Also, when shooting outdoors, I mentioned that, make sure that you secure the painting so it doesn't blow off the easel. Here's a real simple setup that's on our front porch, and camera's on a tripod, the artwork's on an easel. I'm sort of in open shade. I'm in a patio sort of enclosure overhead. The great thing about my patio is, as you can see, my next door neighbor has some lattice over here on the side. And on a nice sunny day, it bounces a lot of extra light into my patio. So I get a nice little fill light that happens in there too. So if you want to talk your neighbor into installing some lattice, give it a shot. But I'm not pointing, the painting's not pointing at the light source. It's not painting at my green wall on the house. Even though it's a subtle green, it could still maybe have a little bit of an effect. So here's the results of that previous setup, shot in that same, on the porch. And now let's move indoors. We'll talk about studio lighting, some of those other lights that we talked about, continuous light source and flash and all that. The best thing about studio lighting is that we have total control over the light. Part of that also is going to determine too that you're going to need to also have control over the light in the room. So if you got a lot of windows, you might want to have some way of darkening the windows or closing the shades. That's kind of the difference between using a continuous light source versus that flash, or the speed lights. Those things are so bright that they can override almost any light coming in through the window. Whereas those continuous light sources don't put out a real strong amount of light. It's quite a bit of light, but you still need to be able to darken the room a little bit. And if you have a hard time getting the room dark enough, then just wait and shoot it, in the evening once the outside light dies down a little bit. So one of the things that we are always told is you're using two light sources. Make sure they're set at 45-degree angles. This will kind of help eliminate some of the glare. It'll also give you an even light source because the same light is on each side of the painting. Here's kind of that setup here, a two light setup. You got your camera facing the artwork and two lights on each side at about a 45-degree angle. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything new here because I'm sure anybody that's ever photographed their artwork is always like, God, the glare is just amazing. It's a problem. The shinier your surface is, if you paint, if you do a clear gloss covering over your paintings, it makes it even harder to do. So all of that can create a lot of problems. I'm going to show you a technique that will also help get rid of that. But one of the other things you can do too is, as I have in the note here, is by moving the lights just a little bit further away from that 45-degree angle. And I'll show you here. So here is, the lights are at a 45-degree angle. And in this case, here's a painting. And I intentionally set the lights so that I just kind of show, here's a little bit of glare on the side of the painting. And the only thing I did to correct for this next one is I took the lights and moved them out just a little bit wider to that about 25, 30 degrees further around the side. There's one thing you have to be careful of is this wider position can remove the glare, but also if you have a very thick kind of painter style that you do, it can also increase, some shadows. And sometimes that's a good thing because it shows off the texture of your painting. It's all up to you, if you think that that looks good. That's also another idea. By putting these lights further out to the side, you'll get a little bit stronger or a little bit of shadowing off of the painting itself. But it'll also help control that glare. So again, glare from lights, another technique here to reduce the glare of the surface is to use a polarizing filter. And I'm sure everybody's had like polarizing sunglasses, and pretty amazing how the polarizing filter removes glare off of water and the surfaces. And you basically just put the polarizer on the camera and rotate till it goes away. Now, the polarizer is going to work pretty good if you're outdoors because we have a single light source, the sun. And indoors, though, when we're using those two lights, the polarizer cannot remove the glare because it might be able to remove the glare from one light or the other, but you cannot remove the glare from both lights with the polarizer on the camera. But I'll say, just wait. There is a way to do it, though. Here's a polarizing filter. Can be, depending on the size, they sell them, it screws on the front of your lens. So whatever your size your lens is like a 58mm polarizer. It might run you about $30. But it's something that if you take care of, it's going to last you a lifetime. For digital cameras, they have what's called a circular polarizer, just the physics about how a digital camera sensor works. Any camera store will sell you the right one, or two or three. Camera stores are fun. So here is, this is the coolest thing ever. This is a polarizing filter that works on your smartphone or your tablet. And this little dot you see in the center, that's the actual lens. And the polarizing filter is, about that size. This thing is like a little potato chip clip thing. It just clips on over the top of the edge of your camera or tablet or your smartphone or your tablet. And you just have to make sure that that lens is sitting in the middle of the polarizer. Otherwise, you're going to cover up the lens. And it's really easy to tell because on the back of the camera, you'll see the image. You'll either see it or you won't see it. And then the idea behind the polarizer is that this little polarizer rotates on the little filter holder. And we'll kind of show you how that works too. Most amazing thing about this little polarizer at Amazon, it's $11.19. I don't know, it's a real valuable piece of equipment. I'm telling you, for $11, you can't go wrong. We'll talk a little bit about that too. All right, so here is really sort of the big grand technique for shooting and removing glare off of your paintings. And it's a technique called cross polarization. It sounds like some kind of thing that comes from a science lab, but I'm going to tell you how this whole thing works. It's pretty amazing. So I found the polarizing gels online, conspicuously placed in a place called www.polarizer.com. They sell it by the foot. It's 17 inches wide, and you need to buy it by the linear foot, $15. And so for a typical light setup, such as this light source that I'm using, you only need to buy 1 foot of it. You cut it in half and you have a gel that you can put over each light source. So you'll see here, I've actually done a little Velcro corner tab here, and this is held onto the light source with Velcro tabs. And that way I can pull it off and store it so they don't get damaged if I'm gonna put the lights away somewhere. Very simple. So here's the technique. The polarizing gel is on the front of the lights, and the polarizing gel is on there, or the polarizing filters on front of the camera. And then the polarizing filter on the camera is rotated until you see the glare disappear completely. So here's the cross polarization technique. Here's a close-up. The one on the left, you'll see there's some glare on the surface of the painting here, and the one on the right was photographed using the cross polarizing technique. All right, so I usually demonstrate this, but what I did was I prepared a little video here so that I can demonstrate it to you through a video. So I shot the video through my cell phone, so you can kind of see how this works.
All right, let's take a look at this cross polarizing technique. Our artwork is in the back on an easel. We have 2 lights set at 45-degree angles. Each light has a polarizing gel attached to the front of it. That remains stationary during the whole process. Camera is facing the artwork, and on the front of the camera, we have a polarizer attached there. The lights that I'm using are those LED lights, and you'll see here has the polarizing gel Velcroed to the front of the light. So there's 2 lights on light stands identical. On the camera itself, I've attached a polarizer. For my iPhone, I'm using this type of polarizer clip. It clips onto the front, and then the polarizer has to rotate. That's part of the process here. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to shoot a live video through my camera. You'll see my finger come in there. That's when I start doing the rotation of the polarizer, and watch the glare just disappear off of the painting. Eventually it's completely gone. What? Let's see that again. All right, let's take another look at it again. This time we'll do a little slower. So there's the artwork. The lights have a little bit of glare on the artwork. There's my finger coming in. I'm getting ready to rotate the polarizer. I'm going to start rotating it. I'm looking through the camera, and as I rotate the polarizer, I'll see the glare slowly disappear. The further I rotate, it keeps going and going until it's completely gone. And that there is what we call the magic of cross-polarization.
All right, so yeah, the only process I'm doing there, the lights are stationary, the gels are on the lights, and I have a polarizer on the front of the camera, and I'm just rotating it until the glare disappears. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Simplest way to control that glare when you're using those 2 lights in the studio like that. All right, so again, with indoor lighting, there's another way that we can control the glare. I mean, you might be able to use the polarizer also with the window lighting in the studio. Here's a setup from our old studio that we had set up, and I was just using, again, the light that's kind of fed in through this side window over here. And the angle that I'm photographing the setup, you can see from my angle that I'm at, there's a lot of glare on the painting. But from the camera view, looking straight on at the painting, I won't see any glare as I'm looking through there. And the way to control that is, like I said before, I can't move the light source, but what I'm going to do is, from the camera angle, and it works better if you have somebody who can help you do this, is somebody can go over here to the easel and just slowly rotate this corner of the painting away from the light source, the window. And as you slowly rotate it, eventually you're going to see the glare just slowly disappears off the surface of the painting. And then you'll know that you have the right angle to be able to shoot the painting with no glare. So you'll actually be able to see it through the camera. Again, so here's an example. Same painting shot twice with window light. It's the same painting shot twice. What's the difference? One of them is with a $3,000 DSLR. The other one is with an iPhone. So again, hard pressed to tell the difference between the 2 of those. So I guess we can answer that question that we asked a little bit earlier. Is it possible to make a good photograph of your artwork using a smartphone? Next time somebody tells you, say, it's not true. I know how to do it now. Larry showed me how to do it. So that's what we're after here. All right. So again, here is a painting shot in the window light. This has no polarizer on it. And I left it kind of intentionally rotated. This is the same setup that you saw a minute ago. There's a little bit of glare on this side of the painting that's picking up from that window. So I put that same polarizer on the camera and rotated the polarizer until the glare went away. So it's, again, you can use it with these single light sources. And definitely control it that way. But no, you have those two options. You can use the polarizer, and you can use the polarizer in addition to rotating the painting away from the window a little bit. All right, so now let's say we've shot our file, we've got the lighting all set up, we've controlled the glare, we're all happy, we've shot a file, and now the next step is, what do I do with my file? I need to process that file. I need to get it, one is I may need to crop it. So we're gonna have a lot of techniques that we could apply to the processing of the image, but this will be all about trying to get our files ready for online submissions. So again, a few basic steps that we can do, and it doesn't matter whether you're shooting a high-end camera or just an iPhone, there'll definitely be some processing that you're going to have to do to get the image ready to go. So we're going to just kind of stick to a few of the basics here today so it doesn't get too difficult and everybody doesn't run away and give up. So here, we mentioned this earlier, try to square your artwork up, make sure things are perfectly parallel, top and bottom, side to side, so that way you can control as much of the out of square problem as possible in camera. But if it doesn't, we're gonna go through a process where I'll show you how to square it up using the software. We're also going to need to crop the image. As you saw in my example where I was showing the polarizing filter, I'm shooting a square painting and my camera's not square, although some of the smartphones have a square setting you can go to, but I left it square just so I can kind of show you that we do need to crop. And again, you don't want to zoom in so tight that the painting risks getting cropped at the edges. So shoot it just a little bit loose and then you can crop it after the fact in the software. Color correct if necessary. Again, hopefully that we don't have too much of a problem getting the color perfect. And then we're going to talk about different processing software. There are tons of them out there. There's some very expensive ones. Some of them can require hours of training before you can even do some of just the basic things. But I'm going to show you, again, a very simple one to use. One here that you can use on your iPad or your cell phone is called Snapseed. It's owned by Google. It's free. That's the good news. It's free and it is very simple, but it's going to take a little bit of understanding how it works. Most things are not just basically intuitive. So again here, if you want to move up and learn a little bit more about how to process your files, Adobe has a program called Elements. It runs about $100 and that way you have the software and you can do even more than you can do maybe in Snapseed, but depends how far you want to go with your processing techniques. Adobe has another program called Lightroom. Definitely a step up, and as with everybody else, they're kind of going to the subscription-based platform, so it's $9.99 a month. So if you're not shooting that much stuff or having to process that many files, remember you can use this to process all of your other great photographs too. One thing I think is really great about painters is you can obviously go out and take photographs and bring them back to the studio to paint. So I think sometimes getting your photographs cleaned up and ready to print or have a print of it, or if you're going to even view it on your laptop, maybe running it through some preliminary software to get it ready so you can bring up the colors or open up the shadows or do things like that. All the software will do those kinds of things. The big granddaddy of them all, of course, is Photoshop. Everybody is afraid to learn. It's such a huge program. There's too much going on there. I'll never learn it. And so I'll do my shameless plug here. I teach Photoshop. So if you want to learn, I do some one-on-one classes. You can contact me through my email. The email will be at the end of the program here today. And also it'll be part of the email when we send out the links for the materials that you can get. All right, so back to the software, Snapseed. This is free and we don't have time to go through, no way I can teach you Photoshop in a few minutes. So we'll stick to the really simple one and Snapseed, and it's free. So again, I usually demo this live through the camera when I do an event. And so this time what I'm doing is I shot another video showing the processing of that same file of the eucalyptus trees from the painting inside of the Snapseed software. So here we go.
All right, so this is my iPhone capture of my screen. I'm looking for my Snapseed. I locate that. So we'll open Snapseed, free app, comes from Google. I'm going to tap the screen anywhere, looking to open up a file. And once it goes in, I'm going to choose Open from Device. That means it's going to look at the files on my phone. I'm going to select Recents. That will have the file in it that I just shot of this painting. Once that opens, I'm going to locate the painting. It's the last one on the list down there in the lower left. Just select that. It opens it here inside of the Snapseed program. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select the tools. I'm going to go into the tools here. The first thing I want to do is I want to crop the image. There's a lot of stuff in there that I don't need. So I'm going to select the crop tool in the upper right-hand corner here. And the goal here is to just show just the painting, to crop out anything that is not the painting. And you're going to see when I start cropping that the painting is not perfectly square, but I'm going to use this free crop that you see in the lower left-hand corner. That should be the default. And I'm going to push in. I'm using my finger on the screen. I'm going to push in from the right-hand side there until the crop just meets the widest part of the painting. Move over to the opposite side here and do the same thing. Push that in. The widest part of the painting is up at the top up there. So this way I can do this without losing any detail of the painting. Going to push up from the bottom now. Get that as close to the bottom left-hand corner. That's the kind of the widest spot of the painting. Down from the top, same thing. So the whole left-hand side of the painting is a little wider than the right-hand side. Now I'm going to push the little check mark. That's going to apply the crop. And there we see the image is cropped now, and we're still out of square. So I'm going to go back to the tools. And this time I'm going to select the perspective adjustment right here. And the way the perspective adjustment works is, it basically what we want to do is from each corner, I'm going to use the free transform, and I'm going to, with my finger, I'm going to touch the screen, in this case in the upper right, and I'm just going to push it. So I'm like pushing the image up and then over to the right so that that very corner just meets the corner of the image and I don't see any of that black background behind it. Moving over to the left side of the screen, it's pretty close on top, but I still want to like push to the left. There's a tiny bit on top that I could probably just barely push up, but I'm just using my finger on the screen to drag the image to the left or the right, and that's the way the transform tool works. Next, we'll move down to the bottom. On the bottom here, you can see that we're quite a ways off in that corner, but not a problem. That's the way this tool works. So I'm going to pull down and over to the left until the image just fills the edge of the frame there. And then we're going to move over to the right side over here and do the same on the bottom. Pull that corner down and over. So you can see I'm pulling it down slowly and then over to the right. And once I get there, the whole image will be perfectly square without having to crop out any of the painting. So that's the way the transform tool works. Now I want to come down and I'm going to hit that little check mark in the back. That'll go on the right side. That's going to commit the transformation. And there it is. We got a perfectly square image. Now I'm going to go back to the tools and I'm going to adjust the image in terms of brightness or contrast or anything else that I want to do. This time I'm going to choose the Tune Image up there in the upper left-hand corner. Tune Image will allow me to do several things to the image, and you'll see once we open that, I'm going to tap the center of the image, and when I push up or down with that, it's going to allow me to scroll through a list of changes that I can make to the image. Brightness, contrast, everything you see here on the list. I'm going to start off with brightness up at the top there. I also have access to the contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, warmth, maybe more than we need, but I'm going to start off with brightness here to start with. And if you watch the numbers in the top up there, what I'm going to do is, again, tap the center of the screen, scrub left and right, And to the right, the image gets brighter. To the left, the image will get darker. So I'm just watching the image as I'm making that adjustment. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the list, tap, scroll up or scroll down. And I'm going to go ahead and come down. I just kind of noticed that I think that the shadows in the image look a little bit on the dark side. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here to the shadows. And once I select the shadows, basically the same idea. I'm going to go ahead and select shadows. I'm going to tap the center of the screen and watch the shadows up there. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of scrub left and right, kind of swiping my finger left and right, and the shadows will either brighten up or darken down. If you watch particularly right in that area there, you'll see a little more detail come in. I'm like up to 41, 45, coming back down, just kind of fine-tuning the shadow till I get exactly what I like. I think that looks pretty good. And since I've kind of brightened up the image a little bit, I think the highlights also could be looked at. So let me go ahead and take a look at the highlights. This image or the painting doesn't have a lot of excessive highlights, but there is one area that's a little bit on the bright side. So if you watch those numbers up there and watch this area right in here, as I scrub left and right, I can brighten it up or I can pull it back down. So you see as I get towards the minus numbers, the contrast or the brightness comes down in those highlights. And that looks pretty good there. Although I think I might maybe come back and touch the brightness a little bit more just to see if I can maybe finesse that. There we go. I think that looks pretty good now. Go ahead and tap the little commit button down there in the lower right. That applies all of those adjustments that I've just made, brightness, shadow, and highlight adjustments. And next, I want to export these changes. I want to save this on my file. And I have three options here. I'm going to choose the bottom option. That's going to export this, and it's going to create a copy with permanent changes. That's what I want to do. My original will still be there. If I want to redo this, my original is still there. But in this case, I'm saving a copy with those changes. It just says I've successfully saved that. I'm back out of Snapseed now. I'm going to go ahead and scroll back over to my photos inside my iPhone. Tap this here and open up my photos. And you'll see down here in the bottom right, there's the image that we just cropped and made the adjustments to. Let's pull that open. So there's the final image. And right here's the one that we did before we started doing the adjustments, before the crop, before the squaring up of the photograph. And over here you'll see this is our final. So this is the after effects. That's after we've done all of our adjustments to it. Pretty simple. You'll find Snapseed available at the App Store. It's compatible with iPhone or Android. It is free, so why not go ahead, get the app. I think you'll be really surprised what you can do with it when you begin editing the photographs of your paintings.
All right, so yeah, I made it look easy. No, it is. It's pretty simple. I mean, there's really only those couple of things that you can do. The most important things, like I mentioned in there, cropping the image and squaring it up. I mean, even if you just started with that, that'll greatly improve the look of your images. And again, being able to square it up and not lose information on the edges of your painting. So once we've got the thing cropped and squared up and all that, the next thing that happens is, you know, in addition to having to do those fixes, that every online show or website, and they're going to give us specific guidelines. They're asking us to resize the file or get it prepped ready to submit. So if you're using some of the advanced software programs, you can access that information there. But I'm going to show you a free way of doing this. It has some limitations, and there's also other online places where you can resize your files too. But I'm gonna show you through online juried shows. Now this is a service that we use at the Oceanside Museum of Art for all the Artists Alliance offsite shows, and even for submitting for all of our juried shows. And typically online juried shows is asking for, you'll see like right about here, they're looking for a file specifically smaller than 4 megabytes, 1920 pixels on the longest side at a resolution of 72. So the cool thing now is that online juried shows will automatically size your file when you submit it, But the really cool thing is they've actually left this on their site. And you'll see there is a page here that's called Image Help. And once you access the Image Help page, you'll be able to get to this Utilities page where you can resize an image. So once you get there, then there's just a couple things you have to do. One is you have to say, okay, yeah, I've read this, I understand the above. And next thing down is it's going to resize my file to 1920 pixels on the longest size at a resolution of 72. Next step here where it says select, I click on that. It basically is going to access my computer and ask me to say, okay, so where is this file that you want me to resize? And I'll say, okay, it's over here. And next step is I'll say, upload that file. And it's going to upload the file to Online Juried Shows. Once it uploads the file, and you see I had that vertical image here, so the 1920 pixels is going to be on this long side here. If it was a horizontal image, it would already recognize that I'm doing a horizontal image, and it would then be on the width of the painting. So at this point, it's already done its work, and what we need to do is now get this image back to our computer. So you see there's a little note here. It says copy and paste, or click and drag the image to your desktop. That's the way you'll get the resized version there. And it's a copy. It's a new one. It didn't change your original file. So your original file will be there just as it was unsized. Or if you click on the image, right click on the image, you can get to the save image as, and that will let you navigate to a folder on your computer if you actually had a folder there for resizing your photos. And so that creates that file size that they're looking for. Again, there's a lot of other software. There's a lot of free software online. I don't have time to go into all of those, but you can certainly look for those online if you want to. And or like I'm saying here too, is on this Online Juried Shows, you will end up with a file in your computer that's the 1920 pixels, and you'll be ready to go. But if you want to learn how to do more resizing, you might have to get some software that's a little more sophisticated. Or like I say, there are some free online services that you can upload to, just like you do to Online Juried Shows. It will resize your file, then you get a copy of it back to put on your computer. All right, so here you go. I love this photo. I know this is a lot of information, and I always know when I go through digital stuff with people, everybody's head's ready to explode. So, you know, don't worry. I know you feel like it's going to explode, but remember, we mentioned in the beginning, the good news is that the webinar is being recorded. You'll also receive an email from OMA with links, providing you links for the video, and also to the PDF file of my presentation with all my notes, and also an equipment list that will give you links and access to find some of those materials that equipment pieces that I showed in the presentation, right? So here's my next favorite photo. Everybody should be happier, right? so there's my email. If anybody wants to contact me directly for any reason, it'll also be in the notes when you download those files. I appreciate everybody who showed up and took the time to come today. I hope I've been able to give you some information that's going to help you, at the very least, improve, you know, the way that you've been doing photographing your art. And then also, I think we set aside some time here to do some questions. So if I'm trying to remember how to do all this, so I'm going to pop out. I'm going to quit sharing my screen. And I'm going to jump over to my chat section here, my Q&A, I'm sorry. And look at this. So yeah, first question up. Do you have any tips on photographing glass sculpture? Translucent works on opaque. Yeah, very hard. Typically, you know, glass pieces against dark backgrounds are easier to shoot. There's also a technique that we have, what's called tint lighting, T-E-N-T. You basically build a transparent tint over the shiny object. Works great for ceramics too, but a tint that goes over the top of the object. And you've seen there's a bunch of them online now. I've seen some for people that are doing their own sort of at-home businesses where it's like a translucent tint. You put the object inside of it, camera's on the outside, and you shoot it. So that's kind of one that I would think of. Let's see, where am I at here on my notes? They're sliding on their own. How does the file image get named? Oh, great question. So once the file has been saved, if anywhere on your computer where you can see the file, if you just click or double click on the name, the actual file name, you can type in the new name that you want to call it, because that is another thing that comes up for the shows. They want to know they want your name on it and maybe the title of the artwork on it also. So that is a good thing. Yeah, you just find the file, the name of the file, click on it, and you can rename it. Let's see, Catherine, when you use the cross polarizing filter or any polarizing filter, do you chance making the painting colors different or stronger? Sometimes, yes, it gets a little bit more contrasty. So yeah, you may have to lower the contrast, or as you saw when I was using the Snapseed thing, I had to actually open up the shadows a little bit more and maybe pull down the highlights a little bit. But you cross polarizing or any polarizing can tend to alter the colors a little bit. So that would be, you know, where you would need to do a little bit of color correction to it also. One says, when you use Snapseed, do you tap where you want to adjust the painting with your finger or just the center image? To actually open up the program, so you're going to tap on the programs. To do that adjusting of the edges, you actually need to tap at each corner. So you'll keep your finger on the screen and you just sort of drag the image over in each corner. So each time you tap, you'll move it somewhere else. If you're going to use, say, like the brighten or the contrast adjustments, you can tap anywhere on the screen, and when you slide left or right, that will adjust the numbers of the brightness and all that. What kind of background for sculptures? A great question, because the best information I can give you is backgrounds with the least amount of detail, something that is not going to take your eye off of the artwork. And typically we use what we would call seamless papers or seamless backgrounds. So there's no horizon running through the back. So it's basically on the table, a piece of paper that just kind of curves up slowly in the back. And then that way, when you set the object on the table, that curved background, there's no horizon in the background for it to interfere. So a lot of times I just use paper backgrounds that are available. A lot of different, there's a company called Savage that makes those. What is the best size of the file? 19 pixels with 72 resolution will be in megabytes. Generally, by the time you get a file to that 1920 pixels and a resolution of 72, the megabytes are always going to be lower than, or low enough or lower than they're asking for. I know a lot of people get freaked out when they go, oh, this thing is only 1 megabyte, it's not going to look good. Trust me, there's a lot of things that contribute to the number of megabytes that you see on a file. It'll be fine when you get it to that 1920, and at the 72 you'll have the right the right number of megabytes to submit. Do you have recommendations for easels, especially the ones that are adjustable for large scale works? I don't. I'm not a painter. My partner Barbara is a painter. She has several of those big wooden easels. The wood ones are great. I don't know brands on them, but the great thing about the wood ones is that, you know, it's not like a tripod. It's a sturdy. You can raise them up and down, and also generally has a way you can tilt them forward and backward too. So that helps kind of control some of those perspectives. Any tips for larger than human size statues? Yeah, lots of light. So typically, another thing for shooting three-dimensional artwork too is to try to limit yourself to one light source, even though, like we were showing with paintings, 2 light sources are great for shooting paintings. But when you're photographing three-dimensional pieces, one of the best techniques I would use, or let's say on a large piece of artwork, I might use 2 lights on the same side together, and then on the opposite side of the lighting, use like a large piece of foam core or something that you can just bounce some light back in to fill the shadows. It's just so much easier than starting. Every time you introduce another light source, you get another shadow on the background, and then all of a sudden you got all these shadows going everywhere. So one light source kind of from one side, and then also a bounce card, a large card to bounce light back in to fill shadows on the sculpture piece. How would you determine if the lighting is uneven, and how would you compensate for this? So the idea that I try to do usually, Steve Schlesinger, hey, usually what I try to do is I usually measure so that the lights are the same distance away from the camera and the same distance away from the artwork. And generally, the really cool thing about those LED lights, those lights are so broad, as well as a lot of those floodlights too. They're not point source lights, so the lights are so broad that they are very even just by in their nature, because the light source is just so. I mean, I can take those lights, those LED lights, I can move one light back away from a wall about less than 4 feet, and it will light ceiling the floor on an 8-foot ceiling. So, but yeah, measuring them so that they're all kind of the same distance from the camera, same distance from the artwork helps too. So Victoria says, sorry, but I did not get the megabyte size you would like, close to 3 megabytes. They're usually, when they're asking you about keep it close to 3 megabytes, generally, I mean, I think they have that worded wrong. You generally want to keep it 3 megabytes or less is what they're looking for. If it's too big, then I would, depending on what software you're using, if you're using the online juried show software, part of that 3 megabyte size is also determined by that resolution. So a resolution of 72 will drop it down pretty small. If you're still at the camera resolution, like if your camera resolution is 242 on the resolution, then it could happen that even at 1920 pixels, you might be bigger than 3 megabytes. So that second part of the sizing, the resolution, will help control that 3 megabyte size that they're talking about. Is there a way to control white balancing with a cell phone camera? So the cell phone camera will actually white balance on its own. The one thing you have to be careful of, though, and I didn't mention this, and that's mixed lighting. Like if you mix, say, tungsten light with outdoor light, you're never going to, it's not never, but it's very difficult because the tungsten light's going to be really warm and the outdoor light's going to be very blue. And when the camera photographs that, it has a hard time balancing 2 light sources. But if your light source is 1 light source, like if it's outdoors or if it's the indoor light that you're using, if it's a single light source, the camera will typically white balance all by itself. So you usually don't have to worry about that. What type of gels to block out window or ignore backlight? I use on my windows, I bought a bunch of like a roll or so many feet of blackout drapery lining. So like they use in hotels and motels, it's just a roll. I cut them to sizes and I clip them onto my windows to cover up those windows during the day. That way I can block the light out in the house. One of the biggest nemesis in most people's homes too is the skylights. You know, if you have to block out the skylight, then sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to do. Polarizing gels, are they directional? Yes. So when you put the 2 gels on the light sources, they both have to be at the same angles. So what I did when I bought that sheet of polarizing gel, I wrote the word top in the left corner, I wrote top in the right corner. Then when I cut it in half, I make sure that when I put those onto my lights, that the top is marked at the top and they're both the same way. Yeah, if those 2 gels, if one of them is at one angle, one's at another angle, it's not going to work. Yeah, so that's a good point. Those 2 gels have to be at the same identical angles. The only thing that changes is the rotating polarizer on the camera. So when I use Snapseed, can I upload the artwork to the desktop? So the easiest way, I think, to get the artwork from Snapseed to your desktop is just email it to yourself. That's what I usually do, because every time you hook the phone into the computer, then it wants to do all these updates and all this other stuff. So I generally just take the file and email it to myself and make sure that you email the largest file possible, because otherwise it's going to reduce the size of your file.